And each one of them dealt with the trials and tribulation in a very different way. None of them, however, could be confused for being mouthpieces for the zalim of their time, for the oppressor of their time. Not a single one of them had an unclear position as to where they stood on the tyranny that was taking place in front of them. Now Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu anhu rose up and he established the Khilafah. He fought and he was murdered and massacred. And some will say, well, Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu said, I want no part of that. He's not challenging the tyranny of the time because he didn't want to cause fitna, right? But there's not a single person in Mecca or Medina that didn't know where Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma stood on the tyranny of Al-Hajjaj. Not a single person thought for a moment, you think he's okay with this? Not a single person would walk up to Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma and say, will you condemn the tyranny of Al-Hajjaj? How he just massacred companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anas ibn Malik and the great tabi'i Sa'id ibn Jubair, massacring people ruthlessly. Ya Ibn Umar, you have anything to say about this? Astaghfirullah, just read Quran. That's not what he did. And subhanallah, in the perfection of Allah's wisdom, each one of these people, by the way, actually challenged the tyrant in a different way. The fact that Ibn Umar did not take up arms against Al-Hajjaj, though he clearly condemned him, called him a tyrant, actually drove Hajjaj out of his mind. It actually drove him crazy. Abdullah ibn Zubayr was easy. He picked up a sword, we pick up a sword, we're ruthless, we have no ethics whatsoever, we'll bomb the Kaaba if we have to. Take this great companion of the Prophet ﷺ and make an example out of him. Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, who's often scapegoated by people who become mouthpieces for tyrants and says, well, he was different from Ibn Zubayr. You know what Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma would do? He would call Al-Hajjaj in his face and in front of the public, Adu Allah, the enemy of God. Al-Hajjaj was giving a speech. He was a tyrant of his time. He was giving a speech after murdering Ibn Zubayr. And Abdullah ibn Umar condemned that, spoke about it. And as he was giving a speech, Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu calls out to him in front of people. This is in Hajj time. The Hajj right after he does that. He says, Ya adu Allah, kharrabta bayt Allah, O enemy of Allah, you have ruined the house of Allah. La nuridu an nasma'ak, we don't want to hear anything that you have to say. So hurry up and wrap it up. That's Abdullah ibn Umar, supposedly ambiguous on his political moral clarity. Now Abdullah ibn Umar did not think it was wise for people to fight the way that Ibn Zubayr was fighting and in those moments against Al-Hajjaj, because he would just wipe them out the way that he wiped out those that came before them. But it drove Hajjaj insane. Hajjaj complained to Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. He said, Shaykhan qad kharif, this crazy old man. Abdullah ibn Umar was 86 years old at the time. 86 years old. He's not a young man anymore. He said, this 86-year-old man is driving me insane. I want to take him out. Abdul Malik ibn Marwan said, don't you dare. And he said, and by the way, in Hajj, people will respect him, they won't respect you. Don't mess with that. Hajjaj comes and he's technically in charge of Hajj, but guess what? The people's hearts all went to Ibn Umar, so people kept surrounding Abdullah ibn Umar, asking him questions about the fiqh of Hajj, following his lead, even though he's not the head of state. But that was the position he commanded amongst his people, and that drove Hajjaj out of his mind. Because he's a tyrant. And a tyrant has a huge ego. He's a narcissist. So Al-Hajjaj orders for someone to poison an arrow and to poke the foot of Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, so that he would die in a way similar to the way that 20-something-year-olds have heart attacks in Egypt these days.